Poor nurse answers wrong call. Never thought the patient is billionaire CEO who needs her. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The clock had just passed midnight in the city hospital. Rain pelted down against the windows, thunder rumbled in the distance, and the fluorescent lights hummed above the long, sterile hallways. On the overnight shift, a young nurse named Emily stacked patient files at the reception desk, her tired eyes flickering between monitors in the dim hallway. Emily lived paycheck to paycheck, often taking double shifts to cover her rent and her mother's medicine. Her sneakers were worn, her scrubs were faded, and yet her dedication was untouchable. She was known among patients as the nurse who never lost her patience, who always offered a smile, no matter how heavy her exhaustion. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. She picked it up, and a raspy male voice came through, heavy with pain. "Please hurry, room 509. Then the line went silent. Emily blinked. Room 509? She quickly checked the patient list. That room had been marked under renovation for weeks. No one was supposed to be there. She frowned, debating if it was a prank call. But the desperation in the man's voice struck her heart. She could not ignore it. Grabbing her emergency kit, she rushed through the echoing corridors, her sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. When she reached the 5th floor, the lights flickered faintly, and the hall stretched into eerie silence. With a deep breath, she pushed open the door to room 509. A man sat slumped against the bed, his white shirt stained dark red. His breathing was shallow, and his hand clutched his side. The scent of cologne lingered in the air, expensive and refined, so out of place in this abandoned ward. His eyes flickered open when he heard her step inside. "You should not be here," he muttered, his tone more like a command than a plea. Emily dropped to her knees beside him, snapping open her kit. "I am a nurse. You are bleeding. Let me help you." Her hands moved with precision gauze, antiseptic, firm pressure on the wound. The man's jaw tightened, both from pain and disbelief. He was used to people trembling in his presence, not ordering him to sit still. Yet here was a nurse, treating him like just another patient, not knowing who he really was. "You do not understand. This is not safe for you," he managed, his breath ragged. Emily pressed the bandage tighter, eyes locked on him. "If you can still talk, you can still live. Stop arguing." His lips twitched into a faint, almost amused smile, even as blood loss drained his strength. For the first time in years, someone had dared to speak to him without fear. Emily adjusted his position against the bed, then asked firmly, "Who called me? Was it you?" The man's gaze darkened. "Wrong number," he whispered. Her heart skipped. Wrong number. A mistake. And yet, looking into his sharp, commanding eyes, she felt that nothing about this moment was accidental. Outside, thunder rolled across the city. Emily had no idea that this single wrong call would not only save his life, but forever entangle hers with the most powerful man she would ever meet. Emily's hands moved steadily as she secured the makeshift bandage around the man's side. The storm outside roared again, a low growl of thunder shaking the windows of the abandoned room. She tightened the knot, then leaned back just enough to study his face. His features were sharp, carved with authority, but his eyes flickered with both pain and something else she could not name. "You are lucky I picked up that call," she muttered, wiping her hands on a cloth. The man's jaw tensed. "It was not meant for you." Emily frowned, pulling her kit closed. "What is that supposed to mean?" "You called a nurse. I came. That is how this works." His lips curved faintly, not in gratitude, but in something closer to disbelief. Most people would not have come. They would have ignored it. Emily's chest tightened at the words. He was right. Most people would have dismissed a mysterious call to a locked ward. But she was not most people. She remembered her father's words when she was a child. If someone calls for help, you go. No matter who, no matter where. That rule had guided her into nursing, And tonight, it had led her here. The man shifted with a wince, and Emily caught the glimmer of his watch again. Even under the dim light, she recognized quality. It looked like it cost more than a year of her salary. She pushed the thought aside. Luxury items did not matter. He was just another patient who needed care. Still, her curiosity pressed. "What happened to you?" He paused, eyes narrowing as though calculating whether to answer. "Wrong place, wrong people. A deal gone, unpleasant." His voice was calm, but the weight of danger hung in his tone. Emily blinked, uneasy at his words. A deal? People? This did not sound like an ordinary accident. "You should file a police report. This sounds criminal." His gaze sharpened, piercing. "The less you know, the safer you are." Emily met his eyes without flinching. "Then I will settle for knowing this. You are alive because of me. You need rest. I will check your vitals." She pulled out her stethoscope, moving with professional ease. For a moment, silence filled the room, except for the steady beat she listened to through the device. His heartbeat was strong despite the blood loss. Relief loosened the tension in her shoulders. She had gotten there in time. When she removed the stethoscope, he was studying her with quiet intensity. "You are not afraid," he said softly. Emily blinked. "Of what? Of you? Should I be?" His mouth curved into that faint, unreadable smirk again. "Most people are." Her eyebrows lifted. "You keep saying that. Maybe most people do not see you as I do. To me, you are just a man who needs treatment." The man leaned back against the bed, the faintest laugh escaping him despite the pain. It was low, rough, and strangely warm. Emily felt her cheeks heat, though she did not understand why. She shook it off, pulling the blanket up to cover him. "I will bring you water," she said, standing. But before she could move to the door, he caught her wrist, not roughly, but firmly enough to stop her. His eyes held hers, steady and unblinking. "Do not leave this room." "Not yet." Emily froze, her pulse quickening. "Why?" "Because," he said, voice steady despite the weakness in his body. "Once you step outside, everything changes, and you may not want to come back." A shiver ran through her. His words carried weight, as if he knew more than he was willing to reveal. Emily pulled her wrist free, steadying her breath. "You are my patient. I will not abandon you. That is all you need to know." For the first time that night, something shifted in his expression, a flicker of respect. He nodded slowly, as though granting her a place in a world she did not yet understand. The storm outside raged on, but inside room 509, an invisible thread had been tied between a nurse with nothing but duty in her heart and a man who clearly carried secrets larger than she could imagine. Neither of them knew it yet, but that fragile bond, born out of a wrong call, would soon change everything. Emily sat back on the metal stool by the bed, her kit open on her lap, her eyes fixed on the stranger whose identity seemed wrapped in layers of shadows. The steady drip of rain against the window mixed with the rhythmic ticking of the clock on the wall. She knew she should alert the supervising physician, but something about his urgent grip on her wrist, his warning not to leave, kept her rooted in that room. "You cannot stay here alone," she said quietly, adjusting the blanket over him once more. "You are weak, and if you lose more blood, it could get worse." He shifted slightly, the pain etched in his face but his voice steady. "You've already done more than I expected. You saved me. That is enough." Emily shook her head. "No, enough is when I know you are stable. Until then, you are not rid of me." For a moment, his sharp gaze softened. He leaned back against the headrest, studying her as though she was the most curious puzzle he had ever encountered. Time passed in a strange rhythm. Emily prepared a saline drip, attaching it with quick precision. Her movements were efficient, a dance learned from years of practice, but her mind kept circling back to him. Who exactly was he? His words hinted at danger, his presence radiated power, and yet here he was, dependent on her care. At one point, he broke the silence. "Why nursing? You could have chosen something easier, something less thankless." Emily glanced at him, surprised. "Because I know what it feels like to be helpless. When I was 16, my mother collapsed at home. No one helped her until hours later. I promised myself I would never let someone suffer if I could make a difference." His eyes flickered, as if her honesty struck a hidden chord. You live by promises. That is rare. Emily smiled faintly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Maybe, but promises are what keep me standing. The storm outside had calmed into a steady drizzle, but the silence in the room was broken again by the distant sound of footsteps in the hallway. Heavy, deliberate, not belonging to hospital staff working the graveyard shift. Emily stiffened, glancing toward the door. The man immediately noticed. His entire body went tense, his jaw tightening as he pushed himself upright despite the pain. "You should not answer that door," he warned in a low voice. Emily's pulse quickened. "Who is it?" His expression darkened. "The kind of people I told you to avoid." Before she could reply, the footsteps passed by, fading into another corridor. Emily let out a shaky breath, but his hand was still gripping the edge of the bed tightly, his knuckles white. "You are in danger," she whispered. He gave a short, humorless laugh. "I have always been in danger. That is the cost of my life." Emily wanted to press him, to demand the truth, but she saw the walls in his eyes, tall and unyielding. Instead, she stood and poured him a cup of water from the jug she had brought earlier. She handed it to him, their fingers brushing briefly. "Drink," she said firmly. His lips curved ever so slightly. "You are very commanding for someone who claims to just be a nurse." Emily crossed her arms. "And you are very difficult for someone who is bleeding. Do not mistake care for weakness." He drank, his gaze never leaving hers. When he set the cup down, he asked softly, "Do you have a name?" "Emily," she answered without hesitation. He repeated it once, as though testing the sound on his tongue. "Emily." There was a weight in the way he spoke her name, as if he intended to remember it. "And you?" she asked. He paused, then gave a faint smile. "For tonight, just call me Daniel." Emily narrowed her eyes, sensing it was not his real name, but she let it go. For now, Daniel was the man in room 509, a stranger bound to her by a wrong call. The night dragged on, and Emily found herself staying by his side, checking his pulse, changing the bandage, and watching the steady rise and fall of his chest. She told herself she was only doing her duty, but something about the way his presence filled the room made it impossible to walk away. As dawn hinted at the edge of the sky, the faintest blush of light spilling into the hospital window, Emily realized she had crossed an invisible line. She was no longer just a nurse tending to a nameless patient. She was a woman caught in the orbit of someone whose secrets could either destroy her world or change it forever. The first rays of morning light filtered through the blinds of room 509, painting pale stripes across the floor. Emily rubbed her tired eyes, realizing she had not slept at all. She had spent the entire night tending to Daniel, checking his pulse, changing the dressing on his wound, and watching for signs of infection. Every time she thought about leaving, she felt an invisible pull to stay, as if walking out of that room would somehow betray her duty. Daniel stirred against the pillows, his voice low and rough from exhaustion. "You stayed the entire night." Emily straightened her back, smoothing her scrubs. "Of course I did. You were in no condition to be left alone." He studied her with those sharp eyes that always seemed to see more than she was willing to reveal. Most people would have walked away. "You stayed." Emily met his gaze, her tone firm. "I told you before, promises matter to me. I promised myself I would never abandon a patient in need." For a moment, silence lingered between them. Then, to her surprise, Daniel chuckled quietly, though the sound was tinged with pain. "You are infuriatingly stubborn." Emily's lips curved faintly, though she refused to admit she found his remark oddly flattering. "And you are infuriatingly ungrateful. At least say thank you." Many. His smile widened just enough to soften his otherwise severe features. "Thank you, Nurse Emily." The way he said her name made her chest tighten unexpectedly. She turned away quickly, pretending to check the IV line. "Do not push yourself. You still need rest." But Daniel's eyes followed her movements. "You speak to me as if I am ordinary." Emily paused, glancing at him over her shoulder. "Why would I not? You are human. You bleed. You hurt. You need help. That is as ordinary as it gets." Something flickered in his gaze, a mixture of surprise and almost admiration. He was a man used to commanding fear and respect, not one who was seen as simply human. Emily busied herself with organizing supplies, but she could feel his eyes lingering on her. It was unsettling, like standing under a spotlight with nowhere to hide. She tried to break the tension. "So, Daniel, if that is even your real name, what exactly were you doing in an abandoned ward, bleeding all over the floor?" Daniel's smirk returned, slow and unreadable. "You ask too many questions." "I am a nurse," she replied flatly. "It is my job to ask questions." "And it is my job," he countered, "to keep my answers to myself." Emily exhaled sharply. "Fine, keep your secrets. But remember, secrets will not keep you alive. Proper medical care will." 4. Their eyes locked, neither willing to back down. For a moment, the air between them crackled with tension, sharp and unspoken. Finally, Daniel broke it with a softer tone. "You are not afraid of me. That is unusual." Emily lifted her chin. "I do not have time to be afraid. Fear does not save lives. Action does." His expression shifted, a trace of respect glimmering there. "You are different, Emily." She felt her heart stutter, but quickly masked it with professional detachment. "Different or not, you are still my patient, and right now you are not stable enough to leave this room." Daniel leaned back against the pillows, his smirk fading into something more contemplative. "Perhaps you are right. Perhaps I should stay. For now." The morning grew brighter, casting the room in warm light. Emily gathered her things, ready to report back to her station. But before she could step away, Daniel spoke again, his voice lower, almost thoughtful. "Emily, do you know what it means to be truly seen?" She frowned, caught off guard. "I see my patients every day. Their pain, their struggles. That is my job." He shook his head slightly. "No. To be seen as more than what the world believes you are. To be seen for who you truly are." Emily swallowed, suddenly unable to find words. She knew he was not just speaking about himself. Somehow, in the space of a single night, he had pierced through the armor she kept around her own heart. She broke eye contact, forcing her voice steady. "You should focus on healing. Philosophy can wait until your wound is closed." But as she walked toward the door to fetch more supplies, she could still feel the weight of his gaze on her back, a silent promise that this encounter was only the beginning. Outside, the hospital began to stir with the routine chaos of the morning shift. But inside room 509, the world felt altered. Emily had crossed an invisible line, and Daniel, whoever he truly was, had seen it too. Neither of them admitted it, but both knew that something had changed between them, something neither duty nor secrecy could erase. The morning rush at the hospital had fully begun, but room 509 remained strangely untouched by the noise of gurneys rolling down the hallways and the chatter of nurses making their rounds. Emily returned with fresh bandages and a tray of supplies, pushing the door closed behind her. Daniel was sitting up a little straighter, his expression composed, though the faint lines of pain remained at the corners of his eyes. "You are awake earlier than I expected," Emily said, setting the tray down on the small side table. "I have been awake for a while," he replied, his gaze steady. "Old habits. I do not sleep when I feel unsafe." Recording died. Emily's brow furrowed as she began unwrapping the bandage on his side. The dried blood clung stubbornly, making him flinch slightly when she peeled it away. "You are safe here," she said firmly. "This is a hospital, not a battlefield." Daniel's eyes flickered with something unreadable. You would be surprised how often the two feel the same. Emily looked up at him, puzzled by his words, but decided not to press. She finished cleaning the wound with practiced precision and secured a new dressing. Her fingers brushed against the edge of his skin, and for a moment she felt the tension coil through him, though he said nothing. When she was done, she gathered the used supplies, but a sudden movement outside the door caught her attention. A shadow flickered against the frosted glass. Someone was standing there, watching. Emily froze, then glanced at Daniel. His expression had sharpened instantly, his jaw tight. He noticed it too. The shadow lingered for a moment before moving away. Emily let out a slow breath, trying to dismiss it as coincidence. "Probably just another nurse," she muttered. Daniel's voice was low, serious. "No. That was not hospital staff. Their steps were too heavy, too deliberate." Emily frowned. "How would you know that?" He leaned back, his eyes never leaving hers. "Because I know the difference between someone doing their job and someone hunting." Her stomach turned cold. She wanted to argue, to say he was being paranoid, but something in his voice told her he was not guessing. He was certain. Trying to shake it off, Emily reached for her chart. I will make sure security is aware. Whoever it was, they should not be lingering around patient rooms. Daniel's gaze softened slightly, though his tone remained firm. You should not involve yourself. It is safer for you if you forget this entirely. Emily snapped the chart shut, meeting his eyes. I cannot forget it. I saw someone outside that door, and I saw your face the moment you noticed. Whoever you are, Daniel, you are not telling me the full truth. He gave a faint, humorless smile. You are relentless. Because lives depend on the truth, she shot back. And right now, yours does too. How? Their standoff was interrupted by the sound of a car engine revving just outside the hospital. Emily turned instinctively toward the window. Parked across the street was a sleek black sedan, tinted windows glinting under the morning sunday. It looked nothing like the modest cars lined up in the staff lot. Her breath caught. That car, it has been there since I came in. Daniel followed her gaze. His expression grew grim. They are waiting. Emily's heart pounded. She wanted to ask who they were, but the look on his face silenced her. Whoever was outside, they were not friends. She turned back to him, anger and fear colliding in her chest. If you are in danger, then you should not be here at all. You need real protection. Why are you hiding in a hospital? Daniel's eyes locked with hers, steady and unreadable. Because this is the last place they would expect me to be. And because you came. Emily blinked, her breath caught in her throat. His words felt too heavy, too deliberate, as if her presence was not just coincidence, but part of some larger plan. She stepped back, shaking her head. I came because someone called for help, that is all. His lips curved into the faintest smile. Perhaps. Or perhaps fate has a stranger sense of humor than either of us can imagine. Outside, the sedan's engine cut off, leaving an uneasy silence hanging in the air. Emily shivered, realizing that whatever secrets Daniel carried, they were far larger than she had guessed. And now, whether she liked it or not, she was standing directly in the middle of them. Emily stood by the window, her pulse quickening as she watched the black sedan across the street. Its tinted windows reflected the pale morning light, revealing nothing of the people inside. Yet she could feel their presence, a quiet tension that seemed to stretch across the road and press against the glass. She turned back to Daniel, who had not moved. He sat upright despite the pain in his side. His expression unreadable, but his posture tense, alert. He looked less like a patient recovering from blood loss, and more like a man preparing for a confrontation. You knew they would come, Emily said, her voice low but firm. Daniel's eyes flickered just for a moment before he gave a slow nod. I knew. Her chest tightened. Then why not tell me the truth from the start? Why let me walk blindly into this? He studied her, his gaze steady. Because if I told you everything, you would have walked away. And I needed you here. Emily shook her head, her frustration spilling out. That is not fair, Daniel. I am a nurse. I chose to help you because you were hurt, not because I wanted to be dragged into whatever dangerous world you live in. Daniel's lips curved faintly, but there was no humor in his smile. And yet, here you are. You stayed when others would have run. The sound of hurried footsteps in the hallway made Emily freeze. She turned sharply toward the door, her heart racing. But it was only a pair of orderlies rushing past, pushing a cart. Still, the unease in her chest would not settle. She faced Daniel again, her voice trembling with anger. Do you realize what this means? If someone followed you here, then the hospital is not safe. My patients, my colleagues, they could be in danger because of you. For the first time, she saw a flicker of guilt cross his face. I never meant to endanger anyone else. That is why I chose an abandoned ward. I thought it would be empty. I did not expect you. Emily's throat tightened at his words. She wanted to believe him, but the silence of the ward, the shadow at the door, and the car outside told her that this was more than coincidence. Her voice softened, though it trembled with fear. Who are you really, Daniel? He hesitated, his jaw tightening, then looked away toward the window. If I tell you, everything changes. You will never look at me the same way again. Emily stepped closer, her eyes locked on his. Then let it change. Because right now, the not knowing is worse. Before he could answer, the sudden blare of voices echoed from outside. She glanced through the blinds and saw men in dark suits stepping out of the black sedan. They scanned the hospital entrance with sharp eyes, speaking into earpieces. Her stomach dropped. These were not ordinary men. Emily turned back to Daniel, her voice rising. "They are here for you, are they not?" Daniel's silence was the only answer she needed. She pressed a hand to her forehead, her mind racing. "This is insane. You are not just some unlucky man caught in the wrong place. You are someone important, someone powerful." Daniel's eyes met hers again, heavy with unspoken truths. "Emily, listen to me. Whatever happens next, you need to remember one thing. I never wanted to pull you into this, but I will protect you. No matter the cost." Her breath caught, torn between fear and a strange, unshakable trust she did not want to admit. The sound of footsteps returned, louder now, coming down their hallway. Emily's heart thudded in her chest. She gripped Daniel's arm. "They are coming." Daniel's jaw set with determination. "Then it is time." Emily stared at him, her voice barely a whisper. "Time for what?" His gaze sharpened, the mask slipping just enough to reveal the truth she had begun to suspect. "Time for you to see who I really am." The footsteps stopped right outside the door. Emily's pulse roared in her ears. And in that suspended moment, she realized that her life was about to change forever. The footsteps outside room 509 stopped, followed by the muffled sound of voices speaking in quick, clipped tones. Emily's heart pounded as she clutched the edge of the bed, her eyes darting to Daniel. He sat upright despite the pain, his expression calm, but his body coiled with tension, like a man who had been waiting for this exact moment. The door swung open, and two men in dark suits stepped inside. Their eyes scanned the room immediately, landing on Daniel before flicking to Emily. One of them spoke into an earpiece. "Target secured." Emily's breath caught. "Target?" She glanced at Daniel, confusion and dread swirling in her chest. But Daniel's eyes never wavered. He exhaled slowly, then looked at her with a steadiness that sent a chill through her. "It is time," he said, his voice low but commanding. One of the men stepped forward. "Sir, the board is demanding your return. This location is compromised." Emily froze. "Sir? Board?" None of it made sense. She turned back to Daniel, her voice barely above a whisper. "Who are you?" Daniel's eyes softened as he looked at her, but his answer carried the weight of truth. "I am not Daniel. My name is Adrian Blackwell. I am the Chief Executive Officer of Blackwell Enterprises." The words hit her like a thunderclap. She blinked, her mind racing. Adrian Blackwell. She knew that name. Everyone did. The billionaire whose face was splashed across magazines, whose company controlled everything from real estate to global tech investments. He was one of the most powerful men in the country. Her knees felt weak. She stumbled back a step. You are a billionaire CEO?" He nodded once, never breaking eye contact. "Yes. And the men outside, the car, the danger it all, follows me, everywhere I go." Emily shook her head, anger rising to cover the shock. "You let me believe you were just some stranger who needed help. You lied to me. Do you know how reckless that was? I put myself, my hospital, everyone here at risk." Adrian's jaw tightened. "I never wanted to involve you. I gave you a false name to protect you. But fate had other plans." Emily's hands trembled as she pointed toward the suited men. "They called you a target. What kind of life are you living that people hunt you down like this? You are not just a patient to me anymore, Adrian. You are a danger." For a long moment, silence pressed down on the room, broken only by the rain still falling against the window. Adrian leaned forward, his voice quieter, almost pleading. "Emily, I owe you my life. You treated me when you could have walked away. I lied, yes, but not about what matters. You are the only person in years who has looked at me and seen a man, not a CEO. That is why I cannot let you go now." Our crate. Emily's throat tightened, torn between fury and the strange pull of his words. She shook her head slowly. "I do not know if I can believe you anymore." Adrian's gaze darkened with determination. "Then let me prove it. Not with words, but with what I choose to do next." The men in suits waited at the door, watching silently. Emily stood frozen, her world tilted on its axis. The man she had saved with her bare hands was not just a wounded stranger. He was Adrian Blackwell, the billionaire CEO, whose life and secrets were now dangerously entangled with her own. Emily's mind spun as the truth sank in. Adrian Blackwell, the billionaire CEO she had only ever seen in newspapers and television reports, was sitting in front of her. The man she had treated through the night, the man she had spoken to like an ordinary patient, was one of the most powerful men in America. The men in suits waited, tense and impatient. One of them stepped closer. "Sir, we need to move now. The press is already circling outside." Emily stiffened. "The press? They cannot know he is here. This is a hospital, not a stage for your company drama." The man gave her a dismissive look. "Miss, you have no idea what is at stake. Mr. Blackwell's enemies are everywhere. Your small hospital cannot contain the fallout." Emily's anger flared. "Do not call my hospital small like it does not matter. Every patient here matters, and if your enemies show up at these doors, it will not just be Adrian's life on the line. It will be all of ours." Adrian raised a hand, silencing his guard. His voice was calm but resolute. "She is right." Both men turned to him in surprise, but Adrian's eyes were fixed on Emily. "This woman risked her career and her safety to keep me alive. If anyone here dares to speak down to her again, they will answer to me." The authority in his tone left no room for argument. The guards exchanged uneasy glances, then lowered their heads. Emily stood frozen, stunned at the public defense, her chest tightening at the unexpected weight of his words. "You did not have to do that," she said quietly. Adrian met her gaze. "Yes, I did. Because for once, I will not let power silence what is right. You saved me, Emily. And now, it is my turn to protect you." Before she could answer, the hallway erupted with the sound of clicking cameras and shouted questions. Reporters had forced their way inside the hospital lobby, their voices carrying up the stairwell. Emily's stomach dropped. "They found you." Adrian stood, ignoring the pain in his side. His height and presence filled the room like a storm. He turned to his men. "Clear a path, but no one touches her. She comes with me." Emily's eyes widened. "What? No. I cannot. This is my job, my life. I belong here, not in your world of bodyguards and scandals." "No." Adrian's expression softened, but his voice remained firm. "Emily, whether you want it or not, they will come after you now. You are the nurse who answered a wrong call and saved a billionaire CEO. The press will not leave you alone, and neither will my enemies. The only way forward is together." She hesitated, her breath shallow, her heart torn. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that his promise was more than just words. But trust had already been fractured once. Adrian extended his hand, his gaze unwavering. "Let me prove that my world does not have to destroy yours. Stand with me, and I will stand for you." Emily stared at his hand, the voices of reporters echoing closer. For the first time, she realized this was not just about saving a patient anymore. This was about choosing whether to step into a life that terrified her, or to walk away and never know what could have been. The hallway outside grew louder, the voices of reporters spilling closer with every second. Cameras flashed against the glass, and Emily felt the weight of the world pressing in. She looked at Adrian's hand, steady and unwavering. His eyes locked on hers with a rare sincerity that pierced through all the walls he had built around himself. Emily's chest rose and fell quickly. Her life had always been simple, defined by duty, long shifts, and the quiet satisfaction of helping those who needed her most. She had never imagined being dragged into the orbit of a billionaire, much less one hunted by enemies and chased by the press. Yet here she was, standing at the threshold of a choice that would shape the rest of her life. "I cannot just leave everything behind," she whispered, her voice trembling. Adrian's gaze softened. "I am not asking you to leave who you are. I am asking you to let me stand beside you. I have lived surrounded by power, by money, by people who see only what I represent. You saw me as a man. That is why I need you more than I need anyone else." Her throat tightened. The memory of that first wrong call echoed in her mind, the voice begging for help, the rush down the empty corridor, the sight of him bleeding on the floor. It had started as an accident, but nothing about what followed felt accidental anymore. Slowly, Emily placed her hand in his. His grip closed around hers, firm and protective. A warmth spread through her chest, steadying the fear that had consumed her moments before. The guards opened the door, shielding them from the blinding lights of cameras. Reporters shouted questions, voices overlapping, flashes firing, but Adrian did not falter. He kept Emily at his side, his hand never letting go of hers. "Mr. Blackwell, who is she?" one reporter shouted. Adrian stopped, turning his head just enough for the cameras to catch his words. His voice was strong, unshaken. "She is the woman who saved my life, and from this day forward, I will not hide it. She stands with me." The crowd erupted in a frenzy, but Emily could only hear the pounding of her own heart. His words were more than a declaration. They were a promise, spoken not in private but in front of the world. As they stepped into the waiting car, Emily glanced back at the hospital. Her life there would never be the same. But when she looked at Adrian, she saw not just the CEO the world revered, but the wounded man she had saved, the man who had looked at her as if she was the only person who had ever truly seen him. The wrong call had brought them together. The right destiny would keep them there. And in that moment, Emily knew love was not about power or status. It was about action, about standing firm when the world tried to pull you apart. And Adrian Blackwell, billionaire or not, had just proven he was willing to fight for her.